farmers who operate on heavy land, this has been superb for them. They've had stock out, able to clean off swards, stock perform well, graze grass to the floor, so that's good. Now equally there are farms who are in drier parts of the country who've had little or no rainfall since I suppose Easter, and things are starting to look a little bit concerning.
Hello and welcome to the Beef Edge, the Teagasc Beef Podcast, for all your latest news, information and advice for Irish beef farmers. I'm Catherine Egan, and on this week's episode I'm joined by Grass10 Manager John Maher to discuss grassland management on the farm at this critical stage of the year. John, you're very welcome. Can you give an update as to what's happening on farms at the moment?
It has been a very good spring. February was, I suppose, normal. March was better than normal in terms of grass utilisation. April was even better again, and sure, May, we haven't reached growth rates like this in a long time. So the spring has gone very well. As we move from February into May, every month has got better. There was an odd blip along the way, but in terms of grass growth, grass utilisation, it couldn't have gone much better, to be honest.
And with the current hot weather at the moment, John, and rain has been very localised earlier this week, and some farms are possibly looking for rain, and there isn't much forecasted.
No, there isn't. There's farms who are looking for rain, but equally there's farms not looking for rain. Now, Catherine, just to be clear about it, if you're farming a heavy land, this is a great run. I work in and have links to the heavy soils program in Teagasc, and farmers who operate on heavy land, this has been superb for them. They've had stock out, able to clean off swards, stock perform well, graze grass to the floor, so that's good. Now equally there are farms who are in drier parts of the country who've had little or no rainfall since I suppose Easter, and things are starting to look a little bit concerning. The growth rates on those farms were flying along late April into early May, but this week now has brought some concerns. There was rain forecasted. It really hasn't materialised all that well. People are getting concerned. Next week a lot of people will be going close to 3 weeks without rain, which is concerning, and it will lead to reduction in grass growth rate. So you both sides of the coin. So there's those who are happy and those who might be slightly concerned. It is fabulous weather for making silage, for animal performance, for those who have moisture, great to grow grass. But I suppose the objectives change now, I suppose, into trying to maintain grass quality, and if you have challenges with rainfall, grass quality will start getting a little bit concerning as well as grass growth.
That's kind of the critical thing at this stage, John, like what actions farmers need to be carrying out to maintain quality at the moment and yet keep grass ahead.
We are in the middle of May. Growth rate has been above normal. Now swards got cleaned out very well, to be fair, but we're heading into the stemming season, and the best thing you can do as a farmer to control stem is to enter into the right grass. If you enter into grass that's too strong or left too long between grazings, that stem starts to develop more. That will harden as the time goes on, which makes it less digestible. The animals don't like eating stem. When they do have to eat it, they perform poorly because the energy value isn't in it. And then the thing that's often forgotten is they eat less of it. So the most important thing is that the farmers who are trying to get the most out of grassland have to enter into the right grass. To put numbers on that, that's about 10 centimeters high, a cover of 1,1500 in or around that. It's all about having leaf from top to bottom. If you think about how most of the grasses we graze, how they grow, it's all about the leaves, and particularly ryegrass. So let's be clear here. If we enter it into the fourth leaf, the first leaf will die. That animals don't like that. If they do eat it, it has lower feed value. The stem starts to come. So it's all about entering into between what we call the second and third leaf stage, and then entering into the right grass. So 4 inches high, 1,400 or 1,500 of a cover, if you want to do the numbers on it. That's the secret to keeping that stem under control. It allows the animal to clean out the sward and achieve the optimum performance, right, from grazed grass. If you go into grass that's too strong, they will leave grass behind. If they do eat a bit of it, they will perform poor, and their intake reduces as well. So if you enter the right grass, the animal will perform well, especially in the current weather, and will clean out the sward and keep the sward quality for the next time and the time after that. As we move further into from May into June and July, if you leave that stem behind, all it does, it gets harder and harder and harder, and it grows less. The animals perform poor, and the animals don't like it and won't eat it as well. And the bottom line is we get less weight gain. Call a spade a spade.
And what actions do you think farmers should be doing now to avoid that stem continuing
Well,
on through the grazing season?
The secret, as I said, is to enter into the right grass, right? We go back to the last few springs and the months of May, they haven't been great for grazing or ground conditions. This is the complete reverse of that. You have great ground conditions, great chance to control grass quality, great chance to enter the right sward. There's surplus grass that can be converted into high quality silage. You've had other podcasts on and you talk about the quality of silage of the diet in the winter. Like, you can make superb silage at the moment, superb quality silage made from grass that's surplus to grazing requirements, and cut it down, wilt it, put it in a bale, and you have fabulous quality feed. So to me, it's a win-win for silage quality and for getting your grazing right. Some people will take the opportunity to reseed, which is another thing you can do when the growth rates are good, because a lot of reseeding got postponed for the last few years due to either shortage of feed, poor weather conditions, shortage of grass. All those things led to postponement. So the secret being here to get into the right grass, and that's the win. Now, I know that reseeding costs money, and I understand that making silage costs money, but high quality silage never goes astray. Everybody has animals on the farm that have to perform at a high level at certain times during their career, if you want to call it that, or their growing spell. And we need high quality silage. It enables meal saving to happen as well, which costs more than bale silage. So I think there's a great opportunity here, Catherine, to make a store of high quality silage at a reasonable cost with fabulous weather conditions, and have that in reserve. We go back to 23 and 24. There've been two poor grass production years, and haven't been great for silage either. So there's an opportunity here to put a reserve in place. Output prices are higher, so I'll argue with you that there's a chance to make high quality silage in a very good grazing year so far, and a very good spring. And when the output prices of cattle are higher, it leaves a little bit, and I suppose sheep as well, it enables a little bit of money to be spent on things like reseeding or putting high quality silage in place on the farm.
And as you mentioned, like, first cut silage will be harvested in the coming weeks. And it is an opportunity for paddocks that are gone strong, that they can be taken out. Where those paddocks that weren't fertiliser for silage, but now that they are being taken out, what actions would you recommend after they're removed with the first cut?
Yeah, so you can make surplus grass, grazing grass, into bales, or you can keep it for first cut. You could do that too, and that would make it cheaper. Admit that. So that's a fair comment. I suppose the other thing that we just, in case we forget, Catherine, 85% of the grass for the year is grown from the 1st of May onwards. So we have a lot of scope here to do things. So where the first cut silage is made then is trying to get the main thing here is that when you graze, you recycle a lot of P and K in the system through dung and urine, irrespective of the animal. But when you make silage, you harvest an awful lot of P and a huge amount of K off the land. So the best way of getting that back is to put the slurry from the winter feeding time back out in that land. And slurry has a very high P value and an exceptionally high K value. So if you talk about, slurry for second cut, we need about 2,000 gallons of good cattle slurry to go back to grow second cut. Even if you're not doing that, it should go back anyway, especially if you haven't applied it during February, March, or April. So the slurry is key here, either for second cut or to replenish P's and K's if you didn't get slurry applied in the spring. Like, as I said, the biggest harvester of P and K on the farm, particularly K, is making silage. So the slurry has to go back to the silage ground. That's important. We also need to be conscious of our fertilizer allowances. They're all getting tighter now in terms of P and nitrogen in particular. And to get the best value out of the nitrogen, be it from the ground, be it from the slurry, and especially the fertilizer, we need to have sulphur in the system as well. So to me, you'll get some nitrogen from spreading slurry. You'll get a lot of P and K, and to be honest, but slurry is low in sulphur, so we need sulphur to go out with the nitrogen, irrespective of whether you're going making second cut or whether you're going grazing to get the best out of nitrogen. We get nitrogen losses when we don't have optimum P's and K's and sulphur. So sulphur is like adding another kilo of nitrogen, to be honest. And years ago we didn't need this because we got a lot of sulphur from the atmosphere from be it poor environmental practices, I suppose, be it domestic or industrial. But now there's not an awful lot less sulphur in the atmosphere because of cleaner fuels in particular. So we need sulphur to come from other sources. So when you're applying fertilizer after silage cutting, we could do. There is a small amount of sulphur in slurry. I don't deny that, but to be honest, we need some sulphur in whatever fertilizer you're applying, be it straight nitrogen with sulphur, or be it compound with sulphur, or be it a zero P product with K and sulphur and nitrogen. Yeah. So I think that's important that we don't forget that, Catherine, to get the best out of the nitrogen fertilizer.
And for farmers that will be closing now for second cut after the first cut is harvested, how much N, P and K should they be applying for the second cut, obviously taking in the different regulations?
Yeah, and that's a fair comment. Look, from a P and K perspective, if you get out 2,000 gallons, Catherine, right, that's the amount of P's and K's, 2,000 gallons to the acres, the amount of P's and K's we require for second cut, right? That's around 6-7 units of P per 1,000 gallons and about 30 units of K, so that's enough for that. Some people said to me, sure, I applied slurry in the spring. Yeah, if you cut first cut, I'd say a lot of that P and K of the 3,000 gallons or 2,500 gallons you applied for first cut is burned. And people said to me, well, can I leave it to after second cut? You can, as long as we balance the books. But to be honest, really, it's a great chance to travel on land, get slurry out onto the silage area, because that's the best use of the P and K that's within the farm gate is the silage ground. As I said, most recycling of P and K happens in grazing, not in silage. So 2,000 gallons for that. The sulphur to me is about 10 units per cut. If you're damper land, maybe a little bit less. If you're drier land, a little bit more. But as a quick rule of thumb, about 10 units of sulphur to the acre per cut. The fertilizer nitrogen, the standard recommended amount, Catherine, would be about 60 to 70 units for second cut. If you apply the slurry with the right machine in the right weather, you can get a nice bit of nitrogen from that slurry. I'm going to say somewhere about 8 to 10 units of nitrogen from the slurry. So if we're talking 65 units is the kind of target for second cuts, and we get 10 from the slurry, then we need 55 from fertilizer sources, right? There are those who mightn't have those allowances, right? And then to me, they'll have to spread a little bit less, accept a slightly lower yield and accept a shorter growth interval. But if that is the case, then fair enough. Equally, then there's those who will cut a smaller second cut area, but keep the recommendations I outlined. So there's more than one way of skinning the cat here. You can cut a little bit less area and use the same recommendations I outlined, or if you don't have that fertilizer allowance or things are tight on you, you could cut a smaller area and aim for the 7 or 8 tons of silage per acre fresh weight, I suppose. So there's more than one way of doing this, Catherine. The secret is to make use of the slurry here. That's vital. It can supply nitrogen, P's and K's now, right? And there's restrictions on nitrogen and restrictions on P fertilizer. Let's be clear, yeah.
And in relation to grazing ground, what should farmers be considering with regard to fertiliser for grazing ground? Obviously, some farmers, depending on stocking rate and regulations, they may be tempted to stop applying nitrogen now at the moment. There's costs to removing surpluses.
And for some, that makes sense. Like if you've lots of silage and you're in surplus grass, I can see how that makes sense, right? There will be some dry stock farms that are stocked between 130 and 170 organic, and the rule of thumb there is fairly simple. It's about 20 units a month, right? If you're stock lower, then you have a lower allowance. You may decide to spread less on one part of the farm and more on the other part of the farm. But the standard would be about 50 to 20 units of nitrogen per month. The most important thing here, though, Catherine, is two things. One, we keep an eye on what our allowances are, because that is now recorded, right? So everybody has to be absolutely clear that. You can't get carried away because we need grass through, July, August, and certainly into the autumn. So that's the first thing, to know what your allowances are. And the second thing is whatever fertilizer that we apply, given the way the year has come, that we make sure there is sulphur with that nitrogen. That is crucial. To get the best out of that nitrogen fertilizer, we need sulphur. And that's irrespective of stocking rate or allowance, whatever is applied. We've had a very dry April and May so far. Sulphur deficiency kicks in more when we have drier springs and drier summers. So I needn't say any more. So whatever is applied in terms of nitrogen, you do need sulphur in the mix as well.
Looking at the length of time, John, stock spend in a paddock this time of year, heavier covers, it can impact the amount of time stock or graze in a paddock, and that can impact the further future grass growth and quality. What advice have you with regard to the length of time stock should be spending in a paddock this time of year and the consequences of it?
Yeah, it's a very fair question. And we produce the Grass10 newsletter every week, and we know that at the moment on dry stock farms we're going into grass that's too high in quantity. It's about I suppose round numbers, Catherine, we're 3 or 4 days too late into the paddock or the field that we're going to graze. We know the average pre-graze yields over 1700. Now that's driven by the fact that the growth rates are above normal. And the reason I say all that is, like, you might plan to stay in the paddock for 2-3 days, and next thing you end up at 6 or 7. There are a number of issues with that, right? The first thing is you will grow less grass. The second thing is that the animals perform poor because they spend too long grazing the last piece of the sward, which, as I mentioned earlier, if that is stem, they will underperform, eat less, and what they do eat has a lower feed value. So they underperform and put on less weight gain. If you spend too long in the paddock as well, they tend to walk around more, burn more energy, and eat less. So getting that right is important. The other thing then is when you spend too long in the paddock and you spend the last 2 or 3 days, what we call cleaning out the paddock or cleaning up, it gives the chance for stem to develop a bit more, and then that means we have quality problems the next time around. So the duration of time we spend in the paddock has an influence on the animal performance, the growth of grass, and the quality of grass, which people forget. So, we're talking about shorter intervals, 2 to 3 days, give them fresh grass, move on, not a week or 5 days, Catherine, I suppose, to be fair, yes.
And I suppose looking at the fact that we've probably some farms that haven't received rain for the last 2 or 3 weeks, and looking, it could be another 10 days to 14 days, what management should be taking place now, this week and next week, to plan for that, I suppose, in some regard, and then also with regard fertiliser, applying fertiliser in this hot conditions, and yet having enough moisture there that the fertiliser is being utilised?
Yeah, they're all very, very valid comments, and you have to, I suppose, plan for the worst and hope for the best, and there's a bit of planning involved. For some farms that are exceptionally dry, you would hope that the fertilizer and slurry has gone out. And the reason I say that is that means the P, K, and nitrogen in the system. If you are, behind on fertilizer applications, you're going to have to plan it a bit smarter. To me, the sulphur is key in trying to deal with drought. So is potash, and there's no restriction on those. Just to mention that. And there's products there now that have, no P but have nitrogen P and have no P but have nitrogen K and sulfur. You can buy muriate of potash, which is a very cheap but old product, not 50 at this stage, with P allowances and fertilizer allowances on many farms. This is a very useful product to have in the yard, and K is what the plant will draw upon when it's short of moisture very quickly. The sulfur gets the best out of nitrogen, be it from the fertilizer, the soil, or the slurry. So I suppose we can play a bit smart here. There is concerns about rainfall. There is reasonable dew at the moment. If we're behind, I think we have to play catch up immediately, Catherine, and not wait too long. I think that the fertilizer has to be out whenever moisture arrives, then that is there in the system to grow. You can do tricks like spreading in the evening, make use of the dew, spread into a cover of grass that traps more moisture. I accept people will say to me, well, John, it mightn't get all the way into the soil and all the way into the plant. That's a fair point. But if we got it into the soil, it'd be ready then to use by the plant whenever a bit of moisture does come. So, we just have to keep that in mind. But if it remains consistently dry for the next 2 to 3 weeks, this will be a different story, Catherine. We'll have to back off and applying fertilizer because what's been spread already wouldn't have been used up. So it's a case of watching and looking. The weather forecast for the next few days, for some parts of the country will get rain, some won't, and you'd have to make a judgment call. It would be nice to have the fertilizer out with rainfall coming. Yeah, I don't deny that. Right, and it's the same with probably slurry, yeah, to be fair. But anyway, you have to make the best of what your own situation is.
Based on that, John, looking at the next 2 to 3 weeks, what is the top advice you have for farmers?
There's a lot of the grass growing year to come. 85% of the grass production on most dry stock farms happens from the 1st of May on. So, we try to do the best we can. The bottom line at the moment, Catherine, is that nearly all dry stock farms are in surplus grass. It's a matter of keeping the right grass in front of the animals. I admit that if you're going to get nervous about grass growth, you're going to keep a little bit in reserve. I don't deny that. It wouldn't be the worst thing to do. But, you can't be grazing forests of grass either, because it just won't grow, the animals will perform poor, and there will be grass quality problems. Yeah.
That's all for this week's episode, and my thanks to John for joining me on the show. You can catch up on all other shows and interviews from the Beef Edge podcast on the Teagasc website at teagasc.ie, or you can listen on Apple and Google Podcasts as well as Spotify. Don't forget to rate, review and subscribe so you never miss a show. For all other updates from our beef programme, keep an eye on our Twitter and Facebook pages. Until next time, I'm Catherine Egan, and thanks for listening.